When I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comforts me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us, above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no illness. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to stay inside for, and no mass media too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. They may say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday they'll join us, and the world will be as one, and the world be as one.
Hey Ernesto, hello everybody.
Hello everybody.
How you doing, fella?
To the Toilet Paper Diaries.
Have you been in your bunker that you built underneath your house? Because you look all camouflaged today. What's going on?
Yeah, I am wearing camo because today we are having a weird title for this episode, which is Worst Case Scenario. And I wanted to be in camo. And obviously this is supposed to be a feel-good show. So I want to tell you, and I want to actually give you a how's it called, disclaimer. That's what it's called. You know what? Yes, what we're going to be sharing today, it is exactly like when you get on the aircraft and the stewardess shows you how to wear the oxygen mask and what you have to do in case there's a crash. Obviously, nobody gets on the plane thinking that there's going to be a crash. However, you have to know what you need to do in case it happens. Same thing when you go into a cruise. Before the cruise goes out, you also have to go to a safety drill. Every time that you are working for an airline, you're also trained in what will happen if there will be a worst case scenario. So I think the most important thing that we need to do is we have to explain what the worst case scenario is. So Dave, you are the expert on this and risk management. So can you brief everybody so that they can understand what this is all about so that we can actually get started with the content of this show?
Absolutely. I've got to say I'm really relieved because when you said to me you're going to be in camel, I thought you said in a camel. But in camel, it makes sense now. So I feel so much better now. I was getting worried. I'm in Dubai. There's camels everywhere. And anyway, yeah, here's the thing about risk management. right now, there's a number of people who are going to have to make a decision about their business, if they're not making it already. And there are a number of different factors that the people who are experts in risk management talk to organizations about. And I've got 5 things here for people to consider, which are the basics, and then the ramifications of how they move on after that are obviously something that gets programmed and accounted for. And when they get a readout of what the situation will be in a risk analysis, then you've got a certain amount of money that's going to go missing between that and that, certain amount of staff, and so on. Let me give you the 5 headings. First of all, disruption due to social distancing and potential illness amongst all the staff. So again, what we're looking at is a certain percentage of people that are going to be affected by this. Say about all the staff, it's not all the staff. There's a lot of people who could end up being affected. So when we're talking about the staff, again, we're looking here at another point, number 2, which is plummeting employee productivity. If you find that your staff are getting ill, if you find that they're working from home and not quite being able to turn up for work in the same way because of the hours being different, or because they've got more challenges at home to deal with and concentrating, then that's something that they take account for as well. Stressed supply chains. You might have your company with lots of money in the coffers and nice easy access to what you produce, but it might be that the suppliers that you rely on have fallen foul. So they either can't produce and give you what you need, or they're having challenges getting access to the stuff that they need to be able to look after you. So what the risk analysis people do is they go through your entire supply chain and see which are the risky parts of the chain and which are like to fall through, and who you might have to have as a supplier if you want to continue to offer the same service to your clients, because your clients will be looking at you and say, well, can you still deliver? Then we've got 2 more points. Number 4 is recession. We're going to be talking a lot about potential recession as well, the unemployment that comes with it, and also the investment pullback. All these investors who said they loved your company, wanted to work with you, wanted to grow with you, many of them will fall foul of it, and many will just say, look, I'm going to hold on to the cash and just see how things are going to go in the future. And then the fifth thing is economic instability and potential civil unrest. If you're going into recession and people aren't sure what's going on, are your clients going to be spending the same as where your suppliers were supplying? We're going to be talking about oil and gas and that in a little while. And of course, you've got the potentials of people kicking off. Civil unrest makes a massive difference when you're hoping that everything will stay normal. It means deploying police, armed forces. It means that people get hurt and there's lots of worry about things going to pan out in the future. So those are the key things of risk management. So what I'm going to do now, Ernesto, if it's okay with you, is look at clouds and silver linings. Do you want me to address that right now, or do you want me to do it a little bit later?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's go. So let's start with a few more clouds. We're already aware of a large part of it. So first of all, we already know there's problems in many industries, certainly the service industries. Let's take travel. I mean, we talk about the planes many times. Hospitality, entertainment, my own particular industry, restaurants, cafes, theaters, casinos, theme parks, anything to do with holidays, anything to do with live performances. Sports is a massive one, music. All these things are going to be put on hold, and they'll be struggling to be able to come back online because it's really hard to pull in an audience that sit shoulder to shoulder and pay the money to be cooped up together to see anybody live. And also a big challenge for that is most of these industries live very much from hand to mouth or from event to event. So they don't really have any long-term income replacement or long-term savings. They do these kind of jobs because they love it. It's only the top of the food chain that tend to be making crazy money. Everyone else is just a job with with more satisfaction, but less cash. Then you've got to look at another point, which is there's a very good chance we won't have a vaccine for 12 months, maybe even 18 months. So what that means? Well, very simple. We're like to get a second wave of coronavirus that hits us after we've managed to put this one to bed. So people who have got it will maybe get it again because they're seeing signs in a handful of people for that. But also they say that something like 70% of people are expected to contract it over 2 years. 70% of our population. Hopefully by that time, the healthcare system will be able to look after us. I must say that as well, 80%, and this is in the US, of the GDP comes from the service industries. So when they're not working, that means that the revenue is not coming in, and that's what everyone's really worried about. So that's the dark side. That's the dark clouds you can see there. So let's turn it up a little bit with the silver linings. And the silver linings are difficult to predict, but they can be easy in history. So let's look at the worst situation we had of recent years, and let's look at 9/11, which is 2001. That's September 9/11, when they had the bombings that hit the planes crashing into the trade centers. What happened with that, with pushback, was all the security was stepped up before anybody got on a plane to make sure that can never happen again. But at the same time as that becomes a massive inconvenience, they created little cities inside every airport. So when you're going there, you know there's going to be a delay before you get on the plane. So you go to a restaurant, you go buying goods as duty free, and that's a whole industry that makes billions all around the world, which would never have happened unless it was for that tragedy. Now, there will be some other things that happen as a result as well. Climate change, we're already starting to see that pollution's gone down around a number of different places. Now, it goes neck and neck with a lack of oil, and so the lack of oil being moved from planes and cars and boats and so on is good in some ways, but terrible in others, which we'll be talking about later on. But it also has a knock-on effect on the individual. Telecommuting will make a big difference. So less people will be commuting, sitting in traffic, listening to the radio, having to put up with it. And on average, people will get about 4 hours back if they work from home. And of course, people are used to working from home, or many people are. The scary figure is, in the US at the moment, only about 30% of people are comfortable or able to just work from home with very little difference. Everyone else is service. And so as a result of that, it's not quite yet ready for that. And so another thing that will come is nobody will be shaking hands anymore. And did you know that shaking hands as a custom goes all the way back to the medieval days? And we just kept it going. And if you've ever shaken somebody's hand and we've had that limp fish style shake, then in many ways you don't want to, especially when people go, and they go like that. You're like, oh, no, thank you. So I'm not going to miss that. There will be an investment, massive investment in healthcare, which is well overdue, paying people more, and in vaccine research, and that may well cure the common flu at the same time because of similarities between coronavirus and flu. And the last thing, which is a silver lining, which is one that I'm loving, I know you are loving as well, is more emphasis on family life. When you get to find out who it is you're actually married to and what your kids are actually like with their personalities. Right now, you work really hard and you also have chill out with the family. I think there's a real change in the wind that many people will want to spend more time with the family and work. Well, we know what work's going to provide. You don't have to dress all the time if you're working from home and lots of things like that. That will make a big difference. But on a slightly cautionary tale, there's been more divorces coming out of the coronavirus lockdowns than over a very, very long period of time before, as people get to realize who their partners really are. So that's one to watch out for. But for everybody else, I hope you're enjoying the love in many different ways.
Great insights, Dave. And yes, indeed, I think what Dave was mentioning here, it's some of these things might not even happen. But as we were saying, in the airline industry, for example, I am an airline person, and I worked for the airline for about 10 years. And several times we were always trained on what to do if touch wood, there was going to be an accident, or if there was a PR crisis. They also trained us on PR, on what we need to say, how we need to handle the media, and everything was thinking on risk management and worst case scenarios. What I see over here is that many people some of them are either pessimistic, some of them are optimistic, some of them are thinking that there's going to be a takeover by the Illuminati. And those are kinds of things that, let's try to be realistic. And this is the reason why we wanted to put together this show. This reminds me of one of my fellow Amsterdammers. I mean, possibly you know that I lived in Amsterdam for about 15 years. So I feel 100% an Amsterdammer, and that is Anne Frank. Anne Frank was in hiding for, I think it was about 3 years. And if you have ever been to Amsterdam, very close to the Keizersgracht, there is her house. And if you go there and they tell you the story of how she was hiding and how she was leaving and every single thing that was happening, it just really makes you think, oh my goodness, I mean, this situation must have been horrible. If you read the book, or if you actually watch the movie of the story, it's very endearing. And to a certain extent, compared to that, we are in heaven. I mean, we are completely in heaven. I don't think that we are in any way, shape, or form in that dire situation. So here is what I think it's absolutely critical for everybody to understand, that we need to prepare for what might happen, and then we need to get you a plan of action so that you can actually start preparing for that, because this is what Dave and I have been doing, and this is what we're going to be covering tomorrow. I am very excited also because today I received a notification from Google and from Apple that the Toilet Paper Diaries was now accepted on the Google Playhouse, and also on the Play Store, sorry, and also on the Apple Podcasts Play. So that's just absolutely awesome. So we are now really absolutely everywhere: Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, so everything. So congratulations, Dave. Well done.
Congratulations. Well done, Ernesto. It's about time we started talking about stuff that was interesting for people then.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, we started talking about all those things. So, yeah, I mean, that is basically what today is going to be about.
Yeah, it's very sobering to think about how things go. When you mentioned Anne Frank, I had a meme sent to me earlier about Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years in captivity, much of it in solitary confinement. And obviously the story is well known. When he came out of it, he took over the government and changed a large part of changed his country forever and changed a lot of the world thinking as a direct result. So there is always a silver lining, but we just got to deal with it right now and just keep safe and keep sane as much as we possibly can.
Yeah. You know, I one of the things that we were talking about, because of course we have been changing this show to make it more relevant to every single thing that is happening, and we have seen from episode 1 to episode 34 now the progression and how we have learned how to do this, and it's very interesting. And for example, we have been trying to stay away from the negative, how many deaths have been happening and this kind of thing, because of course we want to also bring you some good information, some valuable information, but also something that you could also have a good time with. And so we started actually looking for some different kind of news. So let me just share with you some of these really interesting news which are happening right now in the world. You know, right now in Japan, the Japanese government is actually offering sex workers financial aid. So that is just interesting thing. I mean, in what world are we living in that the government is offering financial aid to the sex workers?
Well, as I mentioned before, maybe it's time that they had to adopt a sex worker scheme, so we could all help
Africa, right?
Yeah, just like we did with kids. They should make sure that you
for
can,
$1 a day you can support.
Right. I don't know what the charge would be, because obviously it's got nothing to do with me being happily married. But I would just what else have we got to work on before we get taken off the air?
Well, actually, this one gets worse, because in Colombia,
good.
In Colombia right now, sex toy sales take off amid the Colombia's coronavirus quarantine. So I mean, it's just
wow. Well, you see, I didn't know what you were talking about when you showed me that picture earlier. I thought karaoke inside your house had become really popular, and everyone was buying microphones.
Well. Yeah, there's certain similarities.
Which is your favorite on that picture?
On the sex toys.
What was your favorite one from that picture then?
I didn't really see, but I think it's just very funny, some of the funny things. And now also this one comes all the way from New York. Now it is actually legal to get married in New York with Zoom. So it is now completely legal to get married in Zoom. In New York. I mean, it doesn't really sound very romantic, but anyway.
Well, You mentioned that about a week or so, or maybe even slightly longer, about the apps that were created for people to date during the coronavirus. So people are having meals, being vetted, then having a meal together, but over a distance. It wouldn't surprise me people actually just getting married as a result of that and deciding that the world's going to end. So might as well go for it now. I think, of course, like everybody experiences, it's one thing to go on a date with somebody. When you move in with them, a few people might not stick in those marriages after that. I think these people get married there are people who've met each other but just didn't have the opportunity to do so. The only thing that if this goes on much longer and people do get married, I don't think we're going to have to worry about anyone getting pregnant. Because if that does happen, then somebody wasn't faithful. Anyway, I'm just saying.
Yeah, just saying. And also, what is great that you can invite absolutely everybody. It's not going to cost you. It's not going to cost a fortune. So that's actually, I think, the silver lining.
Yeah, all you do is get them on Zoom.
Yeah,
and your presence in the post.
Yeah.
And so you may kiss the bride, and you go, "What can I do?" So go on.
Yes, this one I think is very sweet. And also very endearing. I mean, this is actually in Mexico. The mariachis perform outside Mexican hospital to cheer up coronavirus patients and also the health workers. Now, this one, it's very nice. But then when I was actually reading the article, one of the things that actually made me a little bit sad about it was the fact that the mariachis, because of course they're street singers, they're people which are outside in the street, and they live out of whatever money they get from people which hire them to sing. And right now, there's nobody which is hiring them. So what they are doing is they are basically with signs out that say, "I will play music for food." That's a really tough thing.
That's really, really sobering thought, isn't it? So if they don't get food, then they don't earn. This is going to be a big problem. This is not just about mariachis. This is going to be a big problem worldwide. And I think that one of the things that's going to have to happen is the cost of living is going to have to drop. Landlords, food costs, all the rest of it. If you want people to be able to survive this long without it turning to crime, it has to be a different thought, mindset that goes into it about being a community and about helping each other out. Food banks. The food banks have got massive queues outside of cars actually using oil and petrol to get in there and get the food that they so desperately need. So that's one to watch. It's kind of scary. And having been in entertainment for many years, I know how much that people, whether they're DJs or singers or in a band or the magicians or entertainers, how much they rely on gig to gig. There's no platform, there's no safety net. If the gigs aren't coming in, you aren't getting paid.
Yeah, it's really weird. I mean, it does make me sad when I hear these things. Now, in the other side, this news comes all the way from Israel. There was a demonstration against the way that the government is handling the pandemic and whatever you want. I mean, once again, without getting into politics, it's just really amazing how people are taking this seriously there in Israel. And I believe very strongly that this is also something that is going to carry on for a number of years, to come. Have a look. Can you see, basically, there's the streets on Tel Aviv, and everybody's actually having social distancing. So there's a demonstration all over the city, but everybody is within 1.5 meters or 6 feet away from each other. Absolutely amazing.
It looks like it's like fairy lights on a Christmas tree. The way that you'd put them out, so there's a distance between them, or a chessboard. Really interesting to see that, and of course that's the way people are going to be protesting in the future if they protest.
Yeah. So I mean, we can see there another change, and this one was sent to me by my friend Lotta in Helsinki. And right now, I mean, it's very sad because I have seen a couple of bakers and a couple of coffee stores here in my area, here in the Woodlands in Texas, that have closed. Because right now, I mean, if you are a Starbucks and you're part of a franchise or part of a chain, it is a lot easier to survive. But if you're in a small coffee shop or anything like that, then of course it's a lot more difficult to survive. And this is how they are doing. I mean, these bakers are using some different creative ways in how to celebrate these crazy times, and then of course support your local. So they was actually me. Is that real toilet paper? No, that is actually That's a cake that looks like toilet paper. And the reason why my friend Lotta sent it to me, because of course of the toilet paper diary. So I think it's very sweet.
Is it a chocolate cake underneath there by any chance? Just a thought.
Probably. That would be more appealing. I just put some chocolate cake there. Yeah.
Moving on swiftly.
Yeah.
There we go. But that's good news that people are starting to come up with inventive ways of involving it. A sense of humor makes a massive difference because we've never experienced anything like this before. And so if you can laugh it off, it's really good for your immune system at the same time. What is that? Darth Vader going shopping. Here we see pictures from supermarkets of the weirdest stuff that people are wearing when they go out to shop. And there we can see somebody, clearly, it's either somebody from Star Wars or it's actually somebody who's got a tarpaulin. What's that around his neck? What is it? Is it like a dumbbell to keep his head up?
You know, this is a competition which is going on right now in social media where people are submitting pictures of the weirdest costumes that they have seen. I mean, see, for example, this is a guy in London. So let me just show you. This is really funny. I mean,
just as a mouse.
I mean, what's the story with that? And this guy as Darth Vader. Or look at this one. This is in Miami, Florida.
Was that just a scuba diving kit on his head?
He just has the scuba diving on his head.
What's that on the end of his? If you turn it back again, Ernesto, what's that on the end of his antenna on his snorkel? On the previous one,
another one.
Well, they've both got something on the end of it. I mean, this guy's got full-on scuba diving kit.
Yeah,
that's outrageous.
This guy is also somewhere in Europe. I'm not sure exactly where that is, but it's also somewhere in Europe. So yeah, I mean,
no chances.
So what we're going to do is we're going to be bringing you some of the funniest, ways that people are actually going for shopping. I'm sure that Walmart, it's another place where there's going to be a lot of really funny pictures. So anyway, those are the funny news that we have been watching right now. But I think now it's time that we go into some of the serious information that we wanted to share on this episode. And yesterday we hit minus $37 per barrel of oil, and we announced it, and we didn't really know how to really interpret what that meant. I mean, I don't think it has ever happened. So I mean, how do you interpret that information? What can you think about that information? So we started doing a little bit of research. And of course, there were thousands of videos on YouTube, and some of them were very negative. Some of them were they were just ignoring the situation, and they were just reporting it. And I wanted to find something that was really realistic,
something balanced,
something balanced. And this is what I found. Have a look.
When was the last time you filled up your car with gas? A week ago? A month ago? Judging by the price of oil, it's probably been a while. The last time crude oil was this cheap, Bill Clinton was in the White House. Adjusted for inflation, oil hasn't traded this low since World War II, 75 years ago. That's how major a shock the coronavirus has been on demand. Globally, 92% of all consumers are self-isolating. This means that people aren't shopping, which means goods aren't being sold, which means they aren't being shipped. Trucks, ships, and planes are sitting idly by, not using any gas. While this might be good for the environment, all of these issues mean a complete and utter destruction of demand for oil. This one event, the plummeting price of oil, will most probably be the spark that causes revolutions, wars, and continued economic turmoil for the foreseeable future. Here's why, in brief. Oil traded at $70 a barrel earlier this year and now trades at almost $10. In March, the OPEC Plus countries, those that joined together in deciding how much oil to produce, had a falling out. Specifically, Saudi Arabia argued for cuts in oil production to increase prices, while Russia argued against. In response, Saudi Arabia massively boosted its own production to seemingly punish Russia, causing prices to collapse. Enter the coronavirus, and global demand dried up, causing the perfect storm of oversupply and practically no demand for oil. As prices dropped, buyers of oil began hoarding it, filling up storage facilities so that they could sell later when prices increased. Right now, approximately 90% of global oil storage is full to the brim. What do you do when there's no demand and all your tanks are full? Many producers can't easily shut down their facilities, meaning the oil keeps on pumping and they have nowhere to put it. Producers have begun to pay people to take their oil off their hands. Prices have gone negative in many parts of the world, and there's no end in sight. While this collapse in oil prices was bad for Russia and Saudi Arabia, it was just as bad for the world's largest producer of oil, the United States. Last week, President Trump intervened, convincing Russia and Saudi Arabia to cut production, but oil prices kept falling. Trump's move was meant to save American oil producers whose costs of production are much higher than Russia and Saudi Arabia's. Not only that, U.S. oil producers, especially shale gas producers, have financed their own exploration using low U.S. interest rates. During the last recession, many were in trouble and had to turn to debt markets. Now tens of billions of dollars worth of bonds that finance fracking operations have been downgraded to junk. Here's why this is critical for you. Many U.S. funds are heavily invested in these junk bonds. You may already be invested in these bonds yourself through your 401k or other retirement savings. A collapse in this sector may trigger a contagion effect, just as the mortgage-backed securities collapse took the entire economy down with it in 2008. This time, however, the entire world is in lockdown, and economies are on the brink of collapse as it is. So what's going to happen? If oil prices stay at these levels, and there's no reason to believe they won't, oil-producing companies and countries will begin to default on their obligations. Many already have. This will force the sale of other securities as investors scramble for cash, and this will depress prices universally. Countries that rely on oil revenue won't be able to provide basic governmental services to its people, and the people will begin to protest. Protests will spawn more protests until leaders are pushed out and revolutions take place. Those with military might may use this as an opportunity to destabilize other countries and take over. What can be done? The Fed has already begun to prop up junk bonds and will likely continue to do so. It's already spent more money in the last 6 weeks than it did in the previous 16 years. The Fed and other central banks will continue to pour more money into markets, but at some point, the impact of their investments will also wear thin. What then? That's really anyone's guess. We're in uncharted territory now. The only thing we know for sure is the longer economies continue to be shut down, the longer the recovery will take.
There you go. So there's the trickle-down effects of oil being cheap but nobody buying it. That's very scary. And this is just a tip of the iceberg, of course. Same as every other industry. It's just a taste of what's to come, and very much a worst-case scenario, which is what today's show's about. By the way, if you've got comments and thoughts, please feel free to drop them into the comments section on Facebook. We'd love to know what you're thinking, because we have our own opinions, but they do get colored and they do become more interesting when we share them with you, and you share yours with ours as well. So feel free to send your messages too. Hello to Amit Prakash.
Absolutely, and same thing. If you are watching right now live, make sure to share the show with everybody. As you know, this is completely. We're doing this because we want to support our community. We want to support our friends. We want to support absolutely everybody. There's no commercial gain of any kind on these presentations, and we would love if you can actually help us get the message across. So yeah, Dave, that is just a very realistic worst case scenario. So we have to start preparing for it, and I think it's just absolutely critical. So we know now the oil part, which is of course a circumstance that happens because of the pandemic. So what else can we think about that might also be part of the worst case scenario? I started doing a lot of research, same as Dave. I mean, we started finding a lot of stuff. And once again, we don't want to go into the pessimistic. We don't want to go into the we're going to be taken over by the Illuminati and the 5G kind of thing and this kind of thing, because of course those are things which are conspiracy theories that you go like, well, you cannot really pinpoint if it's going to be something that is happening or not happening. So what we want to do is we want to really provide real worst case scenarios so that we can actually start preparing it. So we found a great video, which is about 16 or 17 minutes long. So what I did is I basically compressed and took away just the most important parts. And if you can go to YouTube, you can just Google what will happen if the pandemic lasts 18 months. That's the name of the video.
On March 17th, a leaked government plan revealed the possibility that the pandemic could potentially last as long as 18 months and come in multiple waves rather than being a single linear progression. We've seen a huge rush of school closures and event cancellations across the globe, as well as the closing of non-essential meeting places like bars, theaters, and dine-in restaurants. These trends are likely to continue for the foreseeable future and affect almost every aspect of our lives, from food to entertainment to healthcare. Entertainment is moving increasingly towards streaming and video on demand, with major releases like Wonder Woman 1984 skipping its theatrical run entirely and moving directly toward VOD releasing. If we're looking at a protracted pandemic, we'll likely see more and more releases forego their theatrical runs and go straight to video on demand. However, this actually has wider implications for your entertainment as a whole. Production sets for movies and television involve a lot of people working in close proximity, making them huge transmission risks. As a result, it's unlikely new movies and TV shows would be made. So you better get used to enjoying reruns of all your favorite shows. Thankfully, many internet content creators like this show are less likely to be affected due to having smaller teams. So there will be plenty of more new videos to get you through the boredom of quarantine. The national debt is something that's also likely to rise. The U.S. Federal Reserve has already spent trillions of dollars in market fluctuation relief, and the U.S. government has also recently spent $100 billion as part of a COVID-19 relief package. These numbers are likely to continue rising over the 18-month period if the pandemic does indeed last that long. School closures over the next 18 months will also cause a massive disruption to education systems across the globe. High school exams being canceled will lead to huge reductions in college admissions, essentially stalling the college system for over a year, while new systems and technology are developed to work around the COVID-19 pandemic. If classes do resume, they'll likely be online using services such as Zoom that have grown extremely popular as of late. Many commentators have observed that social distancing will likely fundamentally change our way of life for years to come, even after the 18-month pandemic concludes. In the short term, writer Gideon Litchfield posits that the following businesses are likely to be the most damaged by protracted mandatory social distancing: restaurants, cafes, bars, nightclubs, gyms, hotels, theaters, cinemas, art galleries, shopping malls, craft fairs, museums, musicians, and other performers, sporting venues and sports teams, conference venues and conference producers, cruise lines, airlines, public transportation, private schools, and daycare centers. Huge stresses to these businesses will likely shift the economy on a fundamental level, leading to what some economists have dubbed the shut-in economy. The 18-month pandemic also throws the prospect of future federal and state elections into question, considering the amount of public gathering at polling stations that's usually required during voting. The economic and political nature of the entire planet is likely to shift over the coming months, with consolation prizes being the sudden reduction of carbon emissions from working at home and the complete nosedive of international travel during the current crisis. Many predict that the only conceivable way to manage future pandemics in the wake of COVID-19's devastation will be to develop better healthcare systems and sophisticated technology to predict, detect, and treat those at risk before the outbreaks even have an opportunity to become epidemics and then pandemics. Still, in the short term, many have predicted issues with supply shortages, already precipitated with rampant public buying at many retail environments across the globe, as well as dangerous medical supply shortages that could leave some of the most vulnerable in real danger. Ironically, stretching the pandemic over a protracted period of time, such as 18 months, could actually bode well for society overall. You may have heard the phrase flattening the curve recently, but not had it fully explained. Essentially, it's extremely likely that large portions of the US will be infected with COVID-19 regardless of what happens. In order to ensure best results, social distancing spreads the infections over time, allowing the healthcare system to support a smaller number of cases over a longer period of time. If the cases spike massively in a short period of time, while the pandemic will technically be over earlier, it will overwhelm the healthcare system and cause much larger death tolls. In other words, the longer the disease lasts, the better off everyone involved will be. In the meantime, scientists are developing 15 different potential vaccines across the globe, using diverse technologies that include mRNA, DNA, nanoparticles, synthetic, and modified virus-like particles to hasten the process. Phase 1 clinical trials are beginning in multiple countries for various potential COVID-19 vaccines and treatments, though, as stated before, many of these could take as long as 18 months to potentially be offered to the public, especially when factoring in testing and distribution time. While the vaccine will ultimately be a huge part of ending the pandemic, it's an end so far off that it's not worth banking on for the time being. The fact is, the world is currently united in one cause: fighting the COVID-19 virus and preventing it from claiming and ruining lives as much as we can. Everyone on Earth has a responsibility to reduce the spread of the disease by maintaining social distance, keeping good hygiene, and staying informed through reliable sources like the World Health Organization and the Center for Disease Control. While frightening scenarios like an 18-month pandemic are becoming increasingly likely over time, all we can do is be responsible and compassionate and work together in fighting the viral threat that unites us. Thank you for watching this episode of the Infographics Show.
Well, you don't need us anymore. After seeing that, we've got a complete crash course on everything that's happened and everything that's going to happen. It's amazing when you watch an infographic like that, where it's just very plain, but it's showing it like it is, how much you retain about what's really going on right now. Because it's not easy to get news. It's easy to get everything, but the actual news that you can use, digest, and work with has to come from sources that you believe in, which is why we're doing this show.
No, yeah, I mean, I think this video, it's phenomenal. I definitely recommend you to watch the 15-minute version, because it explains the whole thing. And I think for me, it's incredibly valid to think that this is going to be 18 months, the worst case scenario. I mean, that doesn't mean that we're going to be in hiding for 18 months. But anybody which is saying, well, you know, I really want to go out and really want to start doing things, it's just, in my eyes, it's not going to happen. Are you prepared for the next 12 months, 14 months, 16 months, 18 months?
Who can answer that? Because you don't know where your money's going to come from. I mean, if you own your own property, then hopefully you can sit there and just concentrate on paying bills. If you're renting, and more people are going to be renting from now on rather than buying property, then you've got to be reliant on where the income comes through and what the landlord's going to say about the price of rent. So that also begs questions like, for me, being an expat for almost 30 years, living in Dubai and traveling around the world, being a British citizen, do I then go back to my home country? Well, it's not my country anymore. It is, and I love it, and I'm British. But I've lived here for such a long time. My family's been used to being here. If there's no safety net, then what are you going to do? I'm sure these are the questions that are burning a hole into so many people's heads at this moment in time. And the answers we will be sharing with you over the coming shows. So don't worry, we're not going to leave you hanging and worrying about the fact that you've just unable to sleep. There are solutions, and just like before, when we had the crisis of, not a crisis, of digitization, artificial intelligence, and robotics, there weren't enough people for the new jobs that were coming through. There's so many new jobs that were going to come from digitization that people would have to reskill, and then there'd be jobs aplenty for everybody. The same will happen with this. There will be new industries, new jobs, new opportunities for people. It's just that it will end up with a lot of people during the transition period finding it a little bit more tough than they would have liked.
Yeah, that is correct. We are getting Tony Waitley. It's just waiting for us to. He's one of our reporters here in the Houston area, and I would love to hear his take on all of this. Have a look.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Ernesto. This is Tony Waitley from the Houston, Texas area, and I would like to give you some perspectives to consider about what's going to be rolling out in the next few weeks as this coronavirus starts to scale down and people are become more free again, going back to their normal life that they had before this. So the thing is I think a lot of people miss what they don't have because it was taken away from them. We're all in quarantine, sitting in homes and doing these kind of things, and we vie for going back to that office and returning to normalcy. Well, that sounds good, but what's going to happen is you're going to go back to normal, and many of you are going to realize how bad it actually sucked. let's be honest, you're going to go back to that job, you're going to look around, and you're going to look at your cubicle farm or your office or your annoying coworkers or that passive-aggressive supervisor that you report to, and you're going to be thinking to yourself, did I really miss this? Maybe working back home was actually a better idea. Maybe being more productive at home and on my own time schedule was actually a more productive way for me to accomplish the things I need to do for the day. And you're going to start to think about, maybe that wasn't so bad. So while most people are hyper-focused on the current situation, I'm going to challenge you to start thinking about what it's going to be like to return. It's not going to be ideal for most people. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that have also lost their jobs and their income during this process. Those of you that are in that, you need to be more focused on the positivity and the mindset and preparing yourself with new skills, new knowledge, and really arming yourself to go back into that workforce to compete against other people for the same jobs. This is not a time to be focusing on negativity and doom and gloom. Turn off the news. Unfollow all those negative people that you see on your social media feed, because the things that we get to absorb in our brain, we start to process in our subconscious, and you don't want to be at that energy level when you go back and things become normal. So hopefully this message is reaching you and you're going to do some changes and start to find those positive people in your life to encourage you, like Ernesto and Dave. But here we are on the Toilet Paper Diaries. Thank you, and going back to the studio now.
I think it's great if you also connect with Tony. Tony has a fantastic podcast, which is also all over the place. It's called 365 Driven. And I mean, I'm very selective in what podcasts I listen to, but I love Tony's interviews. He has a great style. He has great content. And even though here, I mean, it's an interesting thing to actually listen to his point of view, because of course, I mean, he's thinking in the best possible scenario. Yeah, we're just about to go out, and we are in the contrary saying, well, you know, we have to look in the worst case scenario, not because we are negative or not because we want to have a bad you know, we have bad energy or anything like that, but more than anything is because, of course, what happens if, I think it's always, if you always ask yourself, what if, you will always have solutions for these kind of things. Now, think about it. If we would have asked ourselves, what if there's a pandemic, as Bill Gates told us in 2005 or 2015, whenever it was, we will not be here. We will not be here. But the thing is, you know, that's just something for the movies. And we never really considered it. And here we are.
Absolutely.
That's absolutely critical to make sure that we think of the worst case scenario.
And I think that one of the things is, and I really hope it's true, that people hold their decision makers accountable for the way that this was able to happen, and also the responses that were made, because there's a number of people who've stepped up to the mark. I mean, I've got to say that in what we're doing, we realized that was a problem, and we thought people are going to be very scared. Let's just make a show that gives people a realistic view on what we believe are the ways to move forward. Our target market was working with speakers, entrepreneurs, small business people, people who really do work from gig to gig. But we stepped up to the mark, and we've done a lot to make it easier for people. But I know a lot of people haven't done. Now, here's what I find so scary, really, is the big money organizations, with maybe the exception of healthcare, are all taking a massive hit. Because if you were in real estate, well, nobody's buying property at this moment in time. Very few people buying property because, first of all, you haven't got the virtual reality layout of a person's house so they can watch it from somewhere else. And people aren't going to go visiting property if it hasn't been wiped down properly. But every industry is going to go through a huge reinvention. So there's a lot to be challenged there. And I hope that people do step up, think about other human beings, and help them as much as possible. By the way, we are still in the gift week here, aren't we, Ernesto? So
yes, we are.
We've got the opportunity for you to get some wonderful gifts from us. I've got my own hypnosis audio, which is the chair, and that's a special audio for people who've lost somebody during the pandemic, or if you've lost somebody that you want to be able to get closure from. It's a hypnosis NLP audio, and it creates a chair in your imagination where the person you're missing sits for a short amount of time for you to have closure and talk to someone again. It's really effective, and I know that many people are using it. And do you want to talk about Bishobi?
Yes, absolutely. I also recommend you to get, right now we're getting a few more people which are requesting their digital business card. Right now, if you cannot exchange paper business cards for two reasons. First of all, because you don't know if the business cards have been contaminated with a virus or anything like that, and you don't want to take those business cards. But obviously, I mean, you don't have anybody to be sharing it with. The best way to connect digitally is with a digital business card like this one. And this one, normally, I mean, it is the service like this is about $9 a month. Now you can actually, we will give it to you for absolutely for free, and it's something that it's incredibly helpful. So yes, it is right now gift week, so we continue giving you this, and because of course that's our way to say this is the way that we are contributing. I also have a very last video just to close about FIFA and how they are thanking, you know, the first responders and all the workers. This is very beautiful. Have a look.
You know what I love most about that video, apart from obviously the heart of all those footballers, is all the ex-footballers, the likes of Diego Maradona and Roberto Carlos and so on, all look like they've been spending a lot of time in quarantine with nothing but bags of crisps, fast food, and Netflix to watch. I'm not saying that all footballers go down that direction, but you can see quite clearly that we're not alone. And I hope that they come out of it safely, same as everybody else. What a show, and I still really enjoyed it, by the way. So
yeah, it was great. And we are continuing with our Imagine series. And tomorrow we're going to have some tools and some great ideas in how to prepare for the worst case scenario. It's been an absolute honor being with you. And see you tomorrow.
Take it easy. Bye.